Louder! What's up, everybody, and welcome back to hyPODermic, the pod that sticks you deep. I'm the pod boss, TJ Bowser, and joining me as always is the dawn of disaster, Mr. Nick Benson.
How you doing tonight, TJ?
Pretty good, man. We have a very special episode for you guys today. Nick, why don't you introduce him?
So tonight's guest is really quite special to me because we go back 35 or so years together. We've worked on a few films together. This guy was, to me, was a mentor to me as well in the shops that I worked in, and just an all-around incredible human being. His name is Jeff Farley, and you may know his work. He's done a lot of things. I worked on the Blob with him, but he's got a resume that far exceeds mine.
It's a very impressive resume that includes, but not limited to, Shocker, Prison, Cellar Dweller, Slumber Party Massacre 2, Pet Sematary, Scanner Cop 2, Big Bad Beetleborg, Scary Movie 2, Evil Bong, and Death Warrant.
So let's welcome Jeff. Thank you, Jeff, for joining us tonight.
Hey, guys. How are you?
Doing
Nick?
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's nice to have you here, brother.
Nick and TJ, it's nice to be here, and it's great actually seeing you, Nick. It's been a very, very long time, and it's nice to have this chance to chat. So.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely. So welcome to the podcast. As you know, this is TJ, and we actually have an interesting episode tonight because we even have questions that I usually go in depth a little bit with your background, which we'll do. We'll get to that. There are also some questions that TJ's brought to the table that some folks that listen want to ask you personally, Jeff. So let's start with talking about your background. You know that you and I go back quite a ways, but I want to know, like, I want you to tell me as well as our listeners, like, what got you there? What got you to want to be an effects guy?
Oh, it all started with, I think my brother bought an Aurora Frankenstein model kit, and got this sometime in the 1960s, and I was fascinated with it. I thought it was really cool, and so I had to have one myself, and eventually I got, I think my first one was the Godzilla.
Oh, cool.
In that real bright fuchsia color. The long box, and it was really neat having that, and by that time, I mean, I think I'd seen like King Kong and Seventh Voyage of Sinbad on TV, and I'd caught Godzilla also, and then I came across a film called Equinox, and that sort of really got me interested in stuff, and it turns out that it was all shot around the area where I lived, and I got to know the guys who made it, and got to know them through my association with Forey Ackerman, and so I mean, really kind of like it started out that way, and it turns out I lived in an area in Glendale where just all my neighbors were actors and directors and editors, and so.
Yeah, we had a similar childhood, didn't we? Like both of us grew up in LA, so we were around it. My mom worked at Universal. My stepfather was an editor, so both of us kind of had a very similar upbringing. And I think that we've talked about this even when we were working together, that we were both monster kids, and we were both really into like Famous Monsters of Filmland and things like that.
Oh yeah. I mean, I loved. I remember getting my first issue was one of the Fear books. I think the reptile was on the cover, and then soon after, my mom she started subscribing for me, and so I'd like get home, and there'd be times I'd come home and I'd be like an issue waiting for me, and it was great. Went on for years, and like I said, I found out that Forey Ackerman lived near me, and so I spent about 3 years, like almost every Saturday for 3 years, going down there and spending time at his place, and I mean, boy, meeting
what an amazing place to spend time. I don't know how much our listeners know about Forrest Ackerman's house, but my God, it was like Disneyland for monster makers.
Yeah, it was amazing. Yeah, all those props, all those memories and memorabilia was just really cool. I mean, to be a kid and to be around that stuff was just, God, I never even thought how lucky I was as a kid, and I look back and I think, wow, that was pretty amazing to actually have that opportunity.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Super cool.
Awesome.
So what was as you grew older, what was your first experience with like making something or learning how to make these things? Did you start by drawing and painting, or did you?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, yeah, drawing was like, I mean, as a kid doing crude dinosaurs and, jamming like everything into one page as much as possible, so that, had to have like every creature and, and then eventually, I mean, I got into sculpting and that took a while. I mean, didn't really have too many tools to work with. But eventually over time, I started gravitating towards makeup effects, and I thought about doing a stop motion first. I mean, Forey Ackerman had introduced me to Ray Harryhausen.
Oh, nice.
And I thought that would be a good career to be in. And I had eventually ended up going into doing makeup effects stuff because that seemed more direct and more immediate. You got to see your work more immediately, and as opposed to having to be have the patience of a saint and I mean, you just have to you have to have a different mindset. I mean, I have friends who are stop motion animators, and I'm just amazed by
those guys are incredible artists.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I built a few stop motion models, and I have them sitting around, and I think about like one day maybe pushing them around, and I think, well, they'll probably end up looking something like the Lost Continent or something like that, as opposed to Mighty Joe Young. So, but yeah, that's sort of like how I started getting into it, just by emulating what I was seeing and being as creative as I could be. As a kid, you sort of absorb everything, and so I mean, I was reading everything I could and seeing every movie that I could, and so those were the sorts of things that that I was surrounded with when I was a kid. As a teenager, as a teenager, holding or getting a chance to hold one of the Star Wars Oscars was a pretty profound experience.
Well, that'd change anybody's life, I think.
Yeah, it was like pretty wild. I just started meeting people, and I just, started showing off stuff. I mean, like any other kid, you just start wanting to show off things, and you just want to have maybe, get the opportunity to be involved. So that's sort of where I started at, and I met some people, and I met some guys who worked on Galaxy of Terror, and it was even actually, I'm sorry, actually even sooner than that. I mean, actually, it was at meeting Ray Harryhausen. I met a guy who had been working at Berman Industries, and this was like the end of the 70s, and I ended up within a couple of weeks working on Kingdom of the Spiders.
Oh wow!
And which I provided William Shatner with that story when we ended up working together a few years ago, and he seemed pretty pleased with that. So. But it really kind of I like any other kid. I mean, if you're fascinated with this stuff, you just want to express yourself, and some people do it through acting, and there's other venues that you can express yourself through, but some people get into this sort of crazy end of the business, and they either sort of by design do it, or they stumble into it, or with varying degrees of success. And I think I'm one of those people that sort of by design I stumbled into it, but it's been pretty cool. I mean, I can't think of something else I'd rather be doing. Could have taken over my dad's sheet metal business, and I'm sure that would have provided me with a lot of entertainment. So,
well, what was cool for me was, and I don't know if you felt the same when you got into it, but like I didn't think I was anywhere near good enough to do this stuff. So I was doing it with a band at first, and this was prior to working with Steve, and I guess Steve saw something in me that he felt that I should be working with him. So that's where I started, and I was, like guys like you took me under their wing and taught me everything I needed to know.
That's funny. I mean, I kind of felt that you were already just really well experienced anyway, so I felt I was as much of a schlub, and we were both sort of on an even playing field at that point. And I was just happy to be working with all you guys. It was a cool experience.
It was pretty cool to have somebody like Steve say, "Hey, why don't you come make Rubber Monsters?" And all I could think in my mind was, and get paid for that.
But it's like you had. Well, see, you had the experience with Steve. It's generally my experience with Steve is like either he's trying to hawk photos to me for $20 a shot, like say, "Hey, you want an autograph photo, Jeff?" And then like 2 months later, I see him and he goes, "Who are you?" It's nice. Steve's he's a funny guy. He's really, he's so creative that I can only imagine, the way he is, because he's just like, he's such a creative mind.
Try living with him.
I can't, it's tough enough living with myself. And I've done that all my life. But it really, but I mean, I was with, guys like John Beekler and,
what an incredible, if I could stop you for a minute, just like what an incredible person, John was.
Yeah.
I have to say, I never got the opportunity to work with John, but man, what a great human being. And he just loved to teach people.
Yeah. He was so cool that way. I mean, he was like a big kid in a lot of ways. And he loved to tell the funniest stories. I mean, I can't recount any of them on here because they get a little, but he's really like what an experience that was. And to be, to be taken under a wing, that's what John did for me. And I mean, I'd already
you were at MMI for quite a few projects, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's like by that point I'd already worked I'd worked with James Cummins and by that point I'd already done, I did stuff for Danny DeVito's first directing job, a thing called The Ratings Game for Showtime. And I did some props for that. And then James Cummins had me work on a Twilight Zone episode with them like around 86. And then by the end of that year, I was over at Makeup Effects Lab. And then I went to Lance Anderson's after that. And then I went over to MMI. And I was there, for it's like a year and a half or something. It was like from 80, it was like 80. Well, actually it was not even that, because it was like sometime in early 87. And by the end of that year, I was in Italy.
Oh, right.
And we were there till the beginning, sort of like February of 88. And then we flew back and found out that most of us had no jobs anymore, that Empire had folded, and John was already in the middle of his Friday the 13th movie. And so he had his crew, and unfortunately he couldn't bring me on that. So I ended up gravitating over to the Blob shop.
Right.
So that's one of the places that Nick and I,
that's where you guys. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, and
so,
he was in and out of Berman's too.
I keep forgetting that Empire becomes Full Moon at one point.
Yeah, and I think Jeff, you were over at Berman's too when I was working on Society, weren't you?
I'd been coming through Berman's, but I'd never actually been working over there because they had their had their nice little operation. Boy, what a savior Sandy was for coming up with that business.
Oh my God, what a great lady.
But I remember being over there because was it John Caglione and Doug Drexler had that little space in the back first, and then George took it over for Society.
Well, actually, when we were working on Society, Caglione and them, like we were doing Society, and they were doing Dick Tracy.
So they were still doing. So they're doing Dick Tracy. Oh my God! At the same time,
we were really crammed in there.
Oh my God, it was a tiny space too. It wasn't that big. It was like,
No.
you know, it was really nicely set up though. I have to admit, it was really like, you know, those guys really knew how to organize a space, and that's sort of an art in itself.
Oh, no kidding.
We haven't got to the timeline of the 90s yet with you yet, Jeff, but if we could skip ahead real quick, something we're talking about influences, a show that you worked on that is hugely influential to me is Beetleborgs. Can you tell us what you did to what you contributed to that show?
I got a phone call. A friend of mine, a guy named Robert Miller, called me, and he said that they were looking for something for an episode. This plant character, little talking plant, and they had like no money at all. I know that they had gotten bids from a bunch of places. I mean,
it sounds like
I
Saban.
heard. Well, it was just, I mean, yeah, I heard I like been given like Steve Johnson's bid. I totally like bid like 15,000 on or something like that. It was just a pretty reasonable bid for something like that. And something like, they want to spend $1,500. And I went, you know something, this is probably going to like kill me, but I said, sure, why not? Sure, I'll do it. I said, I've got a bunch of like supplies left over. So luckily I didn't really have to buy anything. So it was like, but I had to make these little plant puppets, and I had to make 3 of them. And it was good that one of them had to look dead, because I think my first foam run came out like really bad and all collapsed. So it was like, well, there's
perfect.
Here's the dying one. So that's perfect. Yeah. That one's out of the way. So, but luckily it all sort of worked out. And I don't know, it was really weird though. I handed the stuff over, and then they kind of went, I think they kind of went, well, we have to pay you. And it's like, you know, it's like, there's the, you know, here's your check. Here's the door.
Yeah.
And that was pretty much it. That was pretty much it for me. But they used the stuff, and it's in the episode, and it was cool. I mean, I'm glad that I did it, and to be involved at least in that was a cool experience. I mean, they're totally business like venture, and I can understand that. And it wasn't really part of their family anyways. I was sort of just kind of, I was hoping it would lead to some other stuff, but it never really did. But you know.
Speaking of your puppets,
that's how life goes.
I know for a fact that you worked on the Demolition Man dummies. And did you see the article recently where one of them popped up in Australia and like a pawn shop? Somebody came across one of like
yeah. Well, it was a Stallone dummy, and I was Gino Acevedo actually figured it out. It was actually one of the dummies that we made for Planet Hollywood.
Okay.
We made maybe a dozen or so Stallone bodies. Maybe it was that many. I can't remember the exact. But we made a bunch of Stallone dummies for Planet Hollywood after Demolition Man.
They're terrifying.
And yeah, it was at first, I mean, I kind of went, because here's what happened when we shot that stuff. I mean, it was a cool situation because there was like really nothing I had to do. I just went to Warner Brothers, went to the stage 16, and I just sit around pretty much and eat craft service, and they say, how's, all right, we're going to shoot the bodies, how they look. And they're encased in these big, like acrylic hockey pucks. Yeah. I mean, and they're completely inside. And it's like, you can't even get to these things. They've like glued these things together. So there's really, I mean, I suppose they had monofilament sort of holding them in. So I suppose if a monofilament had broken, then maybe, that would be something to fix, but nothing ever did. And I look at it and I go, yeah, it looks great. Thumbs up. And that's pretty much it. So a lot of at first Yuri Everson and I were there, and then Yuri had to go get married. So they just sort of left me there on my own. And one thing I remember is they had a really great craft service setup, really top of the line stuff. And then with the Taco Bell and their product placement tie-in, Taco Bell trucked in food twice a day.
Hell
and
yeah.
An entire second craft service table full. Wow. Yeah, like Taco Bell.
That's right, because it's all through that movie. Yeah.
Yeah, it's Taco Bell's the only restaurant left, so it's like, yeah, so it would have been McDonald's. Had McDonald's played their cards right and not said, no, sorry, it could have been them, but no, so it turned out to be Taco Bell, and
that's gnarly.
It's like, but that was a fun thing. It's back when I was eating Taco Bell, so so it was really. But like I said, there was a great choice. Like I can have lobster or a taco supreme.
Or Taco Bell.
So but yeah, it was an interesting situation because shooting that stuff was, and then shooting the Stallone body, and it had everything. It was totally anatomically correct, and when we wrapped, that dummy disappeared. I was like kind of looking all over the place for it because it was on the stage, and then we wrap, and then it's like it's suddenly gone, and I'm like, eventually I find it around the back of one of the flats, and its appendage had been cut off.
Oh,
so it was really kind of a weird, situation. I don't know what to say about it. I was like,
yeah.
Sorry, guys. It's like I was too busy. Like I was too busy being relieved that we just like wrapped. Like I think it was like when I came on, I think it was already. We were like a month or a month and a half over schedule. When I came on, it was already over schedule, but it was fun. It was a really great shoot, and Marco, the director, was really cool. I really liked that guy a lot, and I liked working with everybody. We had a really cool experience on that one, and even Stallone. Wesley Snipes was pretty cool, and Stallone, when he wasn't holding everybody up, was wasn't so bad. It wasn't when he wasn't parading another model through the set. It was like an everyday event.
Yeah.
So it was.
So there were no posters around that said "Sorry about your dummy dick, Sly."
No, that's how I knew it. It couldn't have been one of the. Well, actually, I don't think the ones that we made for Plan Hollywood had that on it, because that would have been very much.
They hung them from the ceilings, so you could just imagine.
All you see is his muscular behind. So, but yeah, it was but it was a cool experience. I enjoyed working on that, and it was quite an experience making all of those dummies, and being involved in it, because there were so many people on the crew that to get all of that work done. But I got called in early on it and pretty much worked all the way through to the end. I thought it was done when they called me up and said, "Hey, we need you to go over to Warner Brothers and hang out and eat this amazing food and get paid a decent rate and and get in trouble for walking through the wrong gate." It's like, "Hey guys, I'm just trying to get there before my call time. That's all."
Yeah.
So hey, I'm working here, guys. See, it's like I have a little pass, and so I was able to show them that. So what's the next on the agenda? My this is your lifetime line.
Nick?
Well, yeah. Go. You know what? Let's talk about Shockers.
All right. Well, when we were working on Shocker over at Lance Anderson's place, we did all kinds of crazy stuff for it. Everything. We built a dummy that was literally made out of flash paper and a big balloon for the body that would, like, the vacuum pressure would suck down and disappear, and made all kinds of crazy stuff like that. I made a pair of they looked like a pair of sausages. That Mitch Pileggi was wearing a pair of sausages on his finger, his fingernails, like these little brass terminals pop out from under his fingernails, and he sticks them in the light socket and says something crazy because he
had some good one-liners in that. That's for sure.
Yeah, it was fun. It really was fun, and I think they really shot themselves in the foot by trying to make it too much of a franchise first before just making a fun film and seeing if they could get something out of it, some extra mileage out of it. Because they killed it like right away, but it's a fun film. It really sort of lives up to its era.
And you worked on both prison films, Shocker and Prison.
Yeah, there were, that was sort of the period where like haunted, like, or horror films based around prisons or ghostly prisoners or whatever, were sort of becoming like in vogue. But
women in prison
was, that was really like, that was a lucky one to be working on, because I just finished over at Lance's on Serpent and the Rainbow, and then went over to John Beekler's, and we were working on the Garbage Pail Kids movie at the same time.
Oh, sweet.
And that's where we were working on, but prison was just going on at the same time. So I managed to get into that pretty heavy and do quite a bit of work on it. That was right before I ended up like taking or doing Deadly Weapon, which was started out as Laser Blast 2. And that one we had Michael Miner, who co-wrote RoboCop as a director on it, and an interesting cast for that film. But essentially it was the same story as Laser Blast, except when they found out that when you take out the stop motion aliens, the movie falls flat on its face and doesn't really have much else to go for it.
So let's kind of transition into music a little bit. So I know that you worked on the Ghoulies tie-in music video with WASP, Scream Until You Like It. Can you talk about that?
Sure. It started by going and doing the album box, or the album art for Live in the Raw album. Actually, even the poster and box art for Ghoulies too. A guy named Francois Dagenet and I were tasked by John Beekler to go down to some photographer's studio and set the Ghoulies up in a toilet, and for him to take these photos and pick the best of the Ghoulies in a toilet for the world to see. But the other thing was the Live in the Raw album, and we had no idea really what was going on when we saw these guys walk in these business suits and track outfits and looking real dapper and sprightly, and they excuse themselves for a minute, and they come out suddenly in their leathers and
blades.
the crotch buzzsaw. And they were suddenly WASP, and they were like the hellions of horror or whatever they are. But still, it was fun. We shot all that stuff that day, and then just a couple of weeks later, we were told that we were going to shoot the music video tie-in for Ghoulies 2, which was again with WASP, and so I knew what to expect. It was a fun day. I mean, we shot like a 21-hour stint, and we had a little time to prep for it, but it was mostly just fixing up the ghoulie puppets that we had lying around, and and then just like on the fly, we would everyone would sit around, we powwow ideas. Okay, we want to do this, or let's shoot a ghoulie into a speaker, so little things like that. So but they gave me the plum job of being the fish ghoulie. So that was my main job was puppeteering that, and it was a lot of fun. I got to be ghoulie for a day and live my dreams, and nothing has ever lived up to that now. So
how many people get to say they were a ghoulie for a day?
Exactly. Some people even more, got to be ghoulies for longer, and but as long as you're a ghoulie for a day, that gets you in the club. So.
And for more Ghoulie stories, check out the Ghoulies Unflashed podcast, available exclusively at projectlouder.net.
Nice little plug.
There you go.
So, Nick, would you like me to get into some fan questions?
Yeah, let's. I mean, we got him into the 90s and stuff. He's done so much more, and now he's still doing effects stuff, but he's also such an accomplished painter. Like some of his stuff now is absolutely
very
paintings.
good paintings. Yes.
And let's go ahead and hit him with some of that, and we'll get into some of his more current work.
The first question is from Brody Kane, host of Lights Camera Exploitation. Can you explain exactly what a lab technician does, and what did you contribute to Pet Sematary?
Well, a lab technician basically is sort of grunt work. It's like, not really grunt work. No, actually, it's a very creative position in a lot of ways, but you do all kinds of stuff. I mean, you're making molds, you're casting pieces, you're seaming pieces, sometimes you're getting to do even more of the fun things like sculpting and painting and finishing up pieces. But really, a lab tech just entails almost everything. You're essentially it's a very fancy way of saying that you are the jack of all trades and master of none, but still you're really, you have to do a lot. And so it really, because you never know what you'll be doing. So it sort of means that you better be on your toes and know your P's and Q's.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in Pet Sematary, again, that was, really working with Lance Anderson. I wasn't on the entire show. I had something else come up and I can't remember what it was, but for the time that I was on, I did a lot of the live casting work on the actor who played Zelda. And I remembered doing a body cast of Denise Crosby, which was a lot of fun. She is a very fun lady, and we had a really great conversation. The day that Fred Gwynn's head cast showed up, because that was done... That was done in New York by John Caglione and Doug Drexler. Fred was out there and didn't want to have to come all the way to LA to do a live cast, or do a head cast. So they did it out there and shipped it out. And it was great. And it reminded me of the day of meeting Fred Gwynn in his Munster makeup when I was a teen, or just like graduated high school, and be on the Universal backlot with my friend. And getting taken over to a stage and meeting Fred Gwynn, Yvonne DiCarlo, and Al Lewis all in their Munsters get up.
Too cool.
So but it was a lot of fun, and I remember working on the cat that gets peeled off the lawn.
Yeah.
I remember building the framework for that, the skeleton for that, and probably in a few other things that are just like, so many years ago. But it was, again, it was that lab tech work.
Yeah.
Did
you get to
just pretty much everything?
Did you get to work with Mary Lambert or Stephen King at all directly?
Not at all. I didn't get to go to Maine with that. That was Dave Anderson, Lance's son, and John Blake. They both went out, and then I think Lance was involved in the stuff that was shot here in L.A., but by that time I was already somewhere else, and so I never got to. It was sort of that Wes Craven thing when people find out I worked on films like Serpent and the Rainbow and Shocker and stuff. They asked me like what Wes Craven was like, and I couldn't tell you. I never met him. I did 2 movies with Jack Nicholson and never met the man, so it's part and parcel of being in the business. You're associated with people in some way, but sometimes you never even are in the same room with them.
Sometimes you don't cross paths with them at all. Yeah.
But you're lucky if you even have a credit on the film, So
back then we had I had a question like that. I think it was a few months back. We were talking about that. Mick Strawn and I were talking about that. And back in those days, like we were still shooting on celluloid, so credits cost money to put on the film, and they didn't want to give those out like can now. It wasn't that easy to get a credit. If you got a credit, you were
oh yeah, tell me about it. How do you think I felt when I found out my first screen credit was on the Garbage Pail Kids movie? After all, I've been working in the business already for years, and next thing you know, it's like the very first time my name appears on the screen, it's the Garbage Pail Kids movie. That was so my claim to fame. And I'd already worked on Serpent of the Rainbow by that point, and that didn't come out for a few months after that, and even Prison. So there goes the high prestige films, and the schlock is right at the beginning. So the ever-changing business. Here's a question from Cameron Lee of the Stronger Than Before podcast and the Big Bad Beetle Bros. Having worked in the special effects,
specifically prosthetics, for the better part of 3 decades. Are there any particular advances in the industry or technology that have changed your process for the better? Likewise, is there a specific change that you find to be worse?
Well, now I'm actually now 4 years shy of 50 years in this industry. Ooh. So I'm sort of like going, I don't know how I got this far and still retain such a youthful appearance. But it there have been quite a few advances, because we saw a lot of cool ones with silicone come in.
Absolutely.
When we were working on Death Becomes Her, that was the first major use of silicone in the industry. So I got to be a part of that technology sort of at the beginning of it and learn some of its ins and outs early on. And then it's, and now it's the technology has sort of even been usurped with higher grade materials, more medical grade silicones like platinum cure and things like that, which now silicone prosthetics. I mean, those boggle my mind in a lot of ways because I never really get a chance to do much of that stuff. So it's sort of like, so it's pretty amazing, although I still love a good foam piece any day. But I think the Prosaid transfers also have been a really amazing advance. Self-stick prosthetics that you barely have to do anything to, and the edges are beautiful and
they're great.
Yeah, and they're so close to skin, and again, you put them on and you practically don't have to do anything to them, and so you get to spend a lot more time drinking coffee. If there's been anything that's sort of been detrimental, I think it's just, I think the fact that technology has sort of usurped, I think, creativity in a lot of ways, because everyone is, for some reason, I don't know how many years we've had this stuff already, but everybody still seems to be fascinated with it. It's it's magic, and it's not. And we have I think we still have a duty to tell a good story first rather than worry about what camera we're shooting something on. And I'd like to see the technology being used the way it used to be used, when it was filmed. None of that's changed at all. But everything, I don't know, so much of it looks these days flat. It doesn't really have, it's everything has this amazing amount of scope, yet some of it all looks like it would look just as at home on a TV screen. And it used to be special when you'd see something like that. And now it's like every film. So it's like, it's kind of like it doesn't really have the same impact anymore. So that's I think the technology has just sort of been, I think we've outgrown it in some ways. And I mean, I'm hoping that films like, I've seen a little bit of the Primevals, and I think that's going to be pretty cool. I think that's a good use of how technology has changed, and where something was going to be done one way with like optical effects is now, using digital composites and stuff like that, which is going to help give the film even more scope. So hopefully that's going to be, something for the positive. So, but it's always a double-edged sword.
Absolutely.
So, final question from Steve Vasquez of the Somewhat Supernatural podcast and the Gore and More podcast. What effects specifically did you create for the taking of Deborah Logan, and what was the inspiration for creating that nightmare-inducing bitch?
Well, that was a Vincent Guastini job. I got called in, probably didn't have anybody else to go in, and I got a phone call one afternoon. It was like, hey, can you come in and start working? And it was like, I think I got there at 4 in the afternoon. I didn't leave till 2 in the morning.
Oh, boy.
But, that was sort of the start of it. But it was a lot of fun. It was like a really cool experience being there at that time because there's a lot of energy going on. I think the first thing I did is I molded this emaciated baby. And then I remember working on things like the woman with the stretchy mouth.
Yes.
Well, Bill Basso sculpted a lot of that stuff, and Greg Smith did also, and I sculpted a few things for it. And Josh Waziling, he did some sculpting for other parts of it also, and it's sort of, Bill and Greg were like the main sculptors on it. And I remember doing this like weird prosthetic that incorporated using, it was like a engine jack or something like that from Harbor Freight. It was like to use it to basically for the little girl to go in so that we could lay the woman at a certain angle where she'd have this big prosthetic on her, and then the little girl could slide in. It's really dangerous too. I mean, I think back on that, oh my God, doing the tests and thinking, oh my God, thank God nobody got hurt or killed doing that. But
it's the money shot in that film. It's
I'm still wondering. I've never seen the film actually. I hate to admit it. I just don't see half of this stuff. I mean, when there's just so many cool. I mean, I watch mostly spaghetti westerns and
hey.
And older, Godzilla films and Ray Harryhausen movies and stuff. So, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to tell. I mean, because I heard some of the stuff was enhanced with CG, or maybe some of the stuff is all CG, or I don't know. I mean, honestly, from what I understand, it was pretty impressive. And even if part of the stuff that we used or built, got used, I mean, it's a pretty good testament because it was some really weird and creative work. And I remember, being kind of just thrown into the middle of it and kind of just feeling my way through at the beginning until I felt comfortable working there. And but it was a good experience, and I'm glad to have worked on something that's so memorable. I remember, just some really, really late nights there, and a lot of people laughing because I think we were all kind of like so tired that that's the only way we could get through the evening. So, a lot of craziness, but it was fun. And we got to do some neat things for it. Maybe one of these days I'll watch the film. I think I can get into streaming or something like that.
Yeah.
And finally check it out. Yeah.
So, now you do some painting. Let's talk about some of those pieces.
Sure. I worked with chemicals for so long, I decided to go to acrylics, and I got, and be honest with you, I kind of never thought I'm really a good makeup artist. I mean, I kind of look at my work now and I kind of go, yeah, that's like just, watch those horrible mummies in Retro Puppet Master, and I think, oh my God, how uninspired, but I don't know. I kind of like creating dimension through color, trying to evoke some memory of things, like the images when I was a kid, reading Famous Monsters and all those old cool like horror books, like a pictorial history of horror movies, and
that's exactly where your work takes me, is right back to reading Famous Monsters and looking at that art.
Those covers, the Basil Gogos covers. I mean, and even to an extent, the Ken Kelly pieces, and I got to finally meet those guys. And I only met Ken once, but I got to spend a few times with Basil Gogos and show him some of the work, and he was really encouraging, and it was nice to get that sort of inspiration from him, because I mean, I look at it, it's like I'm like, wow, I'm like a 60-year-old guy now, and it's like I got to do something with my life. I can't make rubber monsters forever, so I got to do something. And I just don't think that I don't know if Walmart greeter doesn't really seem
that's not appealing,
good,
right?
Yeah, it just doesn't look like it's good in my future.
Yeah.
I mean, what happens when somebody comes up who you worked with? Hi, how you doing? Hey, it's good to see you again. Or it's like, welcome to Walmart. Get out of my face. But
all of your stuff is for sale right now, and you sell it through your Facebook, it looks like.
I do. I sell it through my Facebook. I have a website also, Jeff Farley Fine Art. But I mean, it's like I'm a horrible salesman.
Like, you really undersell yourself.
These pieces are incredible, though.
Incredible. They are incredible pieces.
I appreciate hearing that, because I mean, I look at other people's work and I think that's amazing, and I think that's, I mean, most artists feel that way. I mentioned my way there. I know the stuff I'm doing is good, but it's sort of like I always feel like I get done, and as a matter of fact, I'll post something and then 10 minutes later, I'm working on it again, and I'm adding to it. And
I'll say the same thing with my own work. We are our own worst critics.
Oh, sure. Well, it's always about to make it, trying to make it better and do something, interesting and special. Especially, like I said, I spent a lot of time around these chemicals, and it's nice to do something that's non-toxic, really, and also gives you a chance to really kind of think. And I could just have the TV running in the background, and whatever I want. Well, maybe I'll throw a movie on or something and get some inspiration from there. And
it helps you zone in a little bit, right?
Yeah. So it sure does.
I have a question. The piece that you posted with the King Kong piece, is that a Sleece stack?
No, that is. I think that's the Primeval's Lizard Man.
Ah, okay.
That's one of the Dave Allen guys. I mean, I was over in Romania on that shoot, and 1994. When I met Dave, he had just started with Charlie Band on it, so I got to sort of see it and be there. And now I did some trivia, sort of like my Equinox stop motion models that I'm working on. They're sort of tributes of Dave Allen's stuff, because Dave was one of the earliest guys to really encourage me and really take the time to talk to me, and that meant a lot.
Your
really cool.
mini masks are pretty neat looking too.
Oh, dude, I got to tell you, just personally, like he got very turned off by them, but I got to tell you, those things, even in person, are so much more impressive to look at in person.
I finally sold it. Well, I finally sold a set.
Oh, good.
So it's a little better, but it was like I finally. It was funny too, because I had two sets sitting here, and finally I threw one of them up. I don't even have a basis for them, and somebody immediately went, "I want one," and they took it. So great, I've got one sold, and I've got one more. I'm thinking, great, I make some extra money this way, and also those are great. This and that. Hey, people kind of contact you and get interested in it. And next thing you know, it was sort of the usual, but I got one set sold, so at least I've got that. At least I know they weren't a waste of my time, but they were a lot of fun, and you never know. Maybe with shrinking resources, maybe our masks will shrink also. And then I'll be hailed as a genius, and and the forefront of a vanguard of a of some movement or something. So
it'll pop up in an auction someday later.
Yeah, exactly.
It'd be some crazy amount of money.
That's like they'll sell for half of what I sold them for.
No.
But other than that, I'm glad I did those. Actually, I have an entire second set of those sculpted, and I just haven't molded them. So who knows? Maybe one day I'll get off my Tokus and do those and get and maybe I'll be able to sell one more set.
They are super cool, man. I actually was surprised that they haven't.
I'm glad I did them, because I just wanted to challenge myself to see how small you could make them. Because there is somebody making, I think they're maybe double the size of the ones that I'm making, but they're really very tiny masks. And I think I didn't find out about his until after I'd already started mine. And I kind of thought, well, is it really worth me doing mine? And I went, well, I mean, just because these are so tiny, I kind of want to see how they look when they're done. As a novelty item, they definitely have some value. They're not but if you're if you're a mass collector and you're like a completionist and you just have some little nooks and crannies to fill, that space looks a little bare, but it's not big enough for a regular mask. Right. Mine are perfect for that. You can fit. So.
They're super cool because the paint jobs. I just think the paint jobs are amazing.
On
them.
They're really kind of retro looking.
Super cool.
But the second set, if I ever get them done, I've got one. I've got a little Lee Van Cleef one that Yeah, like, I thought it'd be kind of fun to do something like that. Well, the marksman or the the gunslinger or something. So
Lee Van Cleef.
Next is Chuck Connors, right?
yeah, exactly. I did Chuck Norris also. I did a whole series of them. Oh man.
So Nick, anything else you want to touch on?
Well, why don't we talk about a little bit about our time on the Blob? I mean, a lot of people ask me a lot of questions about that film, and what's nice about it is like, although we both are involved in creature effects on it, we were in different sides of it, which is kind of cool. Yeah. And that's, it's sometimes it's hard to explain to people, but I think that they understand that the creature shop was like its own entity, and you guys were doing one thing, and then you would send stuff up to where we were also, and that's where I was up at oh god, what was the name of it?
We have a Dream Quest or
Dream Quest.
Yeah, I remember.
And when I had actually initially come to the creature shop to talk to you guys, and you guys were pretty crewed up, but I do remember I think it was you and maybe Brian Wade that had said that they would that I might be benefited by going up to Dream Quest, and that's how I got on the show.
That's awesome. Yeah, it really was. So many people. I mean, that was a period too. I mean, that show and the previous show I worked on, Arena, were just had needed so many people. You literally could be just know nothing, walk in off the street, said, I'm looking for a job, and get hired.
Right.
I mean, people were just like, it was. They
were hiring Blob Wranglers like just right off the street, literally.
Oh, I remember. Yeah. It's like, people just, I mean, thank goodness some of us knew what we were doing. But I just remember those days of, going in. I mean, there's nothing like making a 35-gallon drum of slime, which is, which is kind of cool in some ways. I mean, but putting in a little ammonium hydroxide into your water and methocel mix, and then all of a sudden it gels, and you're like, oh wow, cool. It's like, and then filling those little sacks with a little syringe and a slimy syringe, like injecting silk sacks.
That's what the Blob Wranglers did.
Oh my god!
We hired so many Blob Wranglers. Yeah. Just sit here and fill these sacks with this goo.
Yeah, because the rest of us didn't want to do it. Those of us who got tasked with it, like, no, we're not doing this. There are more important things for us to do than this. Yeah,
that's exactly
I remember
right.
I was just going, for 3 weeks or so, driving from, I lived in Glendale and drove to Hollywood, and I'd work in Hollywood for a few hours, and then I'd drive to Valencia and work for a few hours. Then I'd drive to Dream Quest out in Simi Valley, and I'd work the rest of the day there, and that was my days for like 3 weeks, and the day that Lance Anderson called me and said, I've got a license to kill. You want to come to work on that? I said, yes. It's like,
anything to get me out of this.
I gave him a 2-week notice on the Blob, and then I got a standing ovation when I left. Everybody applauded me as I was off to a new and more sane job. It was interesting because it felt like there were times though we were just getting nothing done because they were trying to reinvent the wheel constantly. Really, it wasn't.
Oh, I know.
And they'd want to come up with solutions for things that you would come up with sort of an idea for, but then they wouldn't want to develop that. But they would do all kinds of other crazy things.
Did you ever have any interface time with Chuck?
Oh, sure. Yeah, Chuck was.
Chuck was kind of, in my opinion, Chuck was kind of a stopping point and caused a lot of that. So.
Yeah, well, he was like, I think he had Tourette's syndrome. He pulled me aside to do the scene where Ricky Paul Golden gets blobbed and he's in the car with the girl and he goes
Erica,
to feel her up and then he gets in the kisser with 5 gallons of blob and So I got tasked with doing that for the test, and they just had me outside lying. They had a couple of ladders set up and me and a board, and me lying on the board, and they go, all right, 3, 2, 1, and they dump like this 5-gallon bucket of slime on me. And the first thing I do is I start laughing. Well, Chuck got in my face and started screaming at me like, you're supposed to be scared. You're like, this is a blob. It's going to eat you. You're supposed to be screaming.
Oh my God.
And then he just goes, clean them up and do it again. So I had to go through the whole thing the second time, and this time be like, scared, and that satisfied him. But I remember were you at that test screening at Deluxe Deluxe Labs the night that Chuck was told that they didn't have the soundtrack for the film inserted?
No.
Were you there, Nick?
No.
They got us all. They got a bunch of us together from the shop and took us over to. We all went over to Deluxe Labs to see this partial cut of the film, and it was pretty much the entire film with a lot of slugs missing. But I mean, and Chuck was really animated, really happy about this. He talks about how the music, we're gonna get the music in and this and that. We're gonna and I'm in the back sitting next to the woman who's operating the control panel. She goes, she's on the intercom, like the loudspeaker. Chuck, do you remember those changes that you asked for? And we told you that we probably wouldn't be able to add the soundtrack if you made us make those changes, and we made those changes for you, and now we don't. And he oh my God, he just kind of started oh well, we're not gonna have music for that. Oh, God damn it! It's we're gonna everyone can start humming the music, and shit, and it was and oh my God, and we all sat there and watched him go through this meltdown.
Yeah.
Oh my God. And I mean, honestly, I think the guy's really talented. I really like the films that he's done.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I like a lot of the films that he's done,
but so you'll see as we do shows together, you'll see people are going to ask you questions about working with him, because he does make a good film, but he is not an easy man to work for.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, they'll always get a consistent story from me then. So. Yes, I got yelled at. Everybody got yelled at.
I can't remember. Were you there when we did the phone booth? We did the phone booth.
I was there in the lab when the setting up of the stuff, but not on set for that actual gag. How about the kitchen when we pulled it out of the sink, when it came out of the sink? Me and Andy Workman built that sink, but not on the set. We were was when that's
interesting. Because they put me to work there too. Maybe that was the tie-in, was they knew I was up there, so they put me involved in that with the gate valve. Mm-hmm. So they pull the gate valve and it just pops right out of the sink. Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I just remember kind of going, "God, what am I doing here?" As I got into to make monsters, not be a plumber,
right?
It's
I'm not a plumber. I'm making monsters.
Exactly. It's other than that, just the longest days. And I remember the fires, the hot melt fires that would clear out the shop, and you'd have 50 people suddenly spill out on the Hollywood Boulevard, and we'd have we'd have to be out of there for 3 hours, so we didn't have,
that stuff was awful. It'd kill you.
Yeah, and it was great for us though, because we still have to go back to work, but we're all younger then anyways. We're all younger and more enthusiastic. We didn't care about the hours we did at that time, but we wandered around Hollywood Boulevard, going to all the bookstores and going to get something to eat, so it was kind of an interesting, very interesting experience.
Yeah.
I enjoyed that.
That was definitely an interesting film to work on, and I got paid very well on it, so I was very happy.
Yeah, it was working for guys like Lyle and then eventually Stuart Ziff who came in to replace Lyle.
I remember Stuart.
And seeing Tony Gardner's stuff there, and that's where I met Brian Wade. I remember Tony Ruprecht and I were behind in the car. We were in the back seat puppeteering those tentacles that pop out of Alaric LNEX dummy during that scene, and remember Brian Wade and Tony being there for that publicity shot of them working on the dummy, and all I can think is what Tony and I are like right in that back right behind them. You can't even see us, but we were there, you know.
Yeah.
But
somehow guys like us got a lot of missed opportunities for shots like that.
Oh yeah, but we're lucky.
Pictures are another rarity in our time in the business.
I did a show a few years ago. I didn't want to take one photo of me on set. I wasn't didn't want to be an asshole or anything, but I just really I just really didn't want to. I wanted to concentrate on the work and not be the focus of any attention or anything like that. So they put everything, they have the photos on their website of everybody on it. And so they snuck a photo of me getting coffee off the craft service table. That's the only thing they could do. That's the only way they could get a shot of me.
That's
but I mean, I look back, it is part and parcel of what we do that, you get some of the glory for it because of the stuff that we did. And it's fun to be able to tell people about it and maybe inspire some people to carry on what we did. But I got in it just to be part of it. I didn't never really think that I would be a trendsetter or any make any waves or anything like that. But I got probably a little further than I expected. Doing those Puppet Master films and stuff, that kind of cements you in some people's eyes as being, right up there with Ray Harryhausen or
it absolutely does.
Anybody else. But that's when you get to tell them, well, I did, Stank Mouth, I did
and Ginger Dead Man.
I did the Ginger Dead Man. I did Evil Bong. Even people tell me that they just did. They love those Evil Bong movies.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I now kind of roll my eyes, and I get it makes me realize when I was a kid and I was hitting up Dennis Muren and Dave Allen and Mark McGee. I remember Mark McGee. The first day we meet, he's like, I'm showing these photos, 8x10 stills from Equinox I found at the bookstore that we were at, and he goes, Equinox. It's like, what is it about Equinox? And it's like, with all the good films out there, why Equinox? And then he holds up this 8x10 of Pam Grier in my face. He goes, this is what you should be paying attention to. But it really was those films are sort of your gateways too. And you can't help but be drawn to, some of the cheesier films of the lot, and then hopefully along the way you find out what a good film is too, and you get into those and you just get inspired. That's really what it's about. You have to be kind of crazy to do this business, but you have to be kind of inspired also to do it. So
very true. And I'll say I get asked this a lot too, and you'll find that I think as you interact more with your fan base and people that know what you've worked on in your body of work, is you'll get asked a lot, what was it like? But I tend to, there was so much work at that time. There were so many films being made. It was we were just grabbing work where we could get it. We're guys that are loving what we're doing and we want to keep working. So it was we were on the phone just before our show would end and trying to get on the next thing and the next thing and the next.
Or you just get a phone call or somebody would just call you and say, hey, I've got a show and hey, why don't you come on over? Or, that's, sometimes it's as simple as that. I remember that Silent Night, Deadly Night 5 job, the all-nighter, and just, in the middle of the night, Leibach playing, Life is Life, and we're just Ted Smith and I are in the middle of this shop, screaming, Life is Life, and, just people, what an experience that was. To be young and and free in that way, and working on these films that, I mean, little did we know, a few hours later we'd find ourselves in the presence of Mickey Rooney telling dirty stories. So, but what a life that is, and just very lucky to have these experiences. And that's what then you hear from people who have the same experiences also. I've been talking to a guy who worked on Galaxy of Terror, a guy named Ron Luzordi, and he's been telling me some of his stories, and it's like, wow, relate to all of those. The people that came before us and the people that come after us, we'll all have those experiences, and it all comes from just a simple love of something, and being fearless enough to just give it a try.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. It was a good time, and we were really fortunate to work on a lot of the things we worked on.
Oh yeah, saw some fun stuff.
It's kind of like kids in a sandbox being given everything they ever wanted right in front of them.
And we were younger than we should have been doing that stuff. It's like, this is sort of stuff like when we were kids, all the guys looked like they were in their 60s doing this stuff, and here we are suddenly in our 20s, rock and roll, and everything was punk rock, and we were fueled on coffee and Jolt Cola and
coffee, cigarettes, Jolt Cola, and who knows what else.
Everything else in between. I mean, and that's just it. You hear the and now and now we look back, and some of us have passed on, and we get to we're the guys kind of still there, recounting the stories, and hopefully recounting their stories also.
Well, I'm really glad that you got to join us, Jeff, because you and I have history together, and
I'm glad
we were doing all of this at the same time.
Yeah.
Even though we weren't on every film together, it was nice to have a parallel with you.
Oh, for sure, absolutely. I'm just glad that we're still in touch, and how this all works out. Where you find out you actually still have friends in the industry. It's like it's really one of those things where every time we got a chance to work together was a memorable experience, and anytime working for Screaming Mad George was a memorable experience.
Always.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad we got to do those things though.
It was really fun, and we did a lot of crazy things.
Those things you'll have to pay to hear, though.
Well, thank you for letting me record your stories, Jeff. It was a pleasure to hear them, and thank you for coming on.
Of course, TJ. Thank you very much. And Nick, it's really, really great chatting with you, and we will see each other at some point soon.
Yes.
Absolutely, my friend.
Yeah.
So that concludes this episode of HyPODermic, the pod that sticks you deep. I am TJ Bowser. See you next time.